Hello. Um, so there's been a big dispute has arisen in the last few weeks between the train company Virgin, which is of course part of Richard Branson's business conglomerate, and the Daily Mail newspaper. And basically that is because Richard Branson, who's the CEO of Virgin, has decided to stop selling Daily Mails on his train services. Now, it's been a while since I've used Virgin, but I wasn't actually aware you could buy papers on the train itself. But I guess you can. Um, I've looked at a few sources for this to try and find out. Well, is this a case that because there's been a big backlash against Branson, and in this video, just so you're in no doubt, I'm on the side of Virgin, and I'm going to explain why. But um, I've looked at different sources, and I don't get the impression this is a case of Daily Mails are being banned full stop. So there is nothing stopping someone getting their Daily Mail, if it's their paper of choice, at a train station and bringing it onto the train. I can't see a situation, and I wouldn't support a situation where people are thrown off because they have a paper that the CEO doesn't like. But nowhere is that the indication of what is happening. Rather, it's just a case that he will not be selling it on his business, which, in my opinion, this is right. Now, I want to challenge some of the things some of the allegations that are being made against Virgin. And there have been a lot of people in the press and in politics have lined up to condemn Branson and say he's censoring the Daily Mail. And there's been the usual lines about how important free press is to our democracy, etc., etc. Right, let's get a few things straight. The Daily Mail is a very powerful newspaper. It's second only to the Sun in terms of circulation. By some accounts, it's even first because the Sun's figures have fallen. Whatever way you look at it, it's very powerful newspaper, um, and it is very influential. I think a lot of politicians would admit that it does have a deeply ingrained role in politics in general elections. So that's an important point because the Daily Mail is portraying itself as a victim right now. It's saying, "Oh, this big bad company is bullying us, our noble little newspaper," and it's crocodile tears. It really is. The Daily Mail itself censors critical opinions, and I know this for a fact because I've went to their Facebook page to criticize what I consider to be the hate mongering of Paul Dacre, and it hasn't been published. And I've seen things saying like the page monitors are reviewing your comment. So this is a bit like the pot calling the kettle black. The Daily Mail is in no position to whinge about censorship when they won't allow critical opinions of themselves. Um, that's an important point because they are playing the victim right now. I do find it unfortunate that a lot of people in politics and the press have lined up to defend the Daily Mail because this is not a case of the Daily Mail just being banned completely. I mean, there's a million other places they can still sell. Boris Johnson has been lining up to call it a disgrace, and he's been really vocal about it. Number 10, less vocal. They say that it's not for them to tell a private business what to do, but they disagree with the decision. Um, and other newspapers, left and right, have been lining up to defend the Mail. But that makes sense because all newspapers fundamentally have the same notion they can operate wherever they want. And I don't actually agree with that. I think that in this country, we actually take the concept of freedom of press too far, quite frankly. Don't get me wrong, freedom of the press is extremely important. What is the role of the press? It is to hold powerful people to account, right? And it is important to have a plurality of opinion. Even Jeremy Corbyn has said that. Jeremy Corbyn isn't supporting this. I mean, and given the way the Daily Mail treats him, that is actually deserves some credit. Say what you want about Jeremy Corbyn, and I am by no means a fan, but Corbyn is not out to get the right wing press in the way that they are out to get him. Not in the same way, and he deserves credit for that. Be honest, but Just the arrogance of the Daily Mail infuriates me, because this is a paper that day in and day out plays judge, jury, and executioner in big, bold headlines. It's by far the country's most pompous newspaper. The Sun and the Star may be trash, and they may come out with a lot of unpleasant stuff as well. But I think people don't take them that seriously. I mean, I hate the Sun, but I don't think people take it that seriously. And if people think of being biased against right wing newspapers, I say the same thing about the Daily Mirror, which is left wing. I dislike tabloids generally. But anyway, that's how I feel about that is beside the point. I want to focus on the facts here. And the fact is that the Daily Mail is being hypocritical. Another fact is it isn't really being censored, because Branson isn't saying you can't read it. He's just saying we're choosing not to sell it. That's not the same thing. He's not saying that anyone who reads it on my train will be kicked off. That would be censorship. So I believe this is being blown out of proportion. And in the end of the day, Virgin is a private business. And if the Tories really do believe in private enterprise, well, then they have to be consistent rather than just backing the newspapers of their ideological choice. Um, I mean, I do wonder, would Boris Johnson be as outspoken on this if it was, say, The Guardian that was taken off sales? Somehow I don't think he would. I don't believe he would, because the Daily Mail, okay, the Daily Mail does criticise the government plenty of times as well, but ideologically it is definitely in line with hard Brexiteers. I don't think anyone could dispute that. But I mean, if you look at the hate mongering that the Daily Mail comes out with, the way it stirred up hate, and that's the only word for it, the way they had modelled the headline against Remain MPs, have you no shame? And they constantly play judge, jury, and executioner in that way. I think it really pompous, and it infuriates me. People seem to think that freedom of the press means that powerful tycoons like Paul Dacre are above criticism. Why is it? Oh, here's another point. Newspapers like the Daily Mail can take a choice of which political party or movement they want to support. Fine, that's their right. Why then can train companies not choose which papers they want to sell or not? What's the difference? What is the difference? So I think we're taking the freedom of press argument too far. Freedom of press shouldn't mean that newspapers can bully their way around and force businesses to promote them. That's absurd. That is absolutely absurd. And I'm frustrated that people are portraying the Daily Mail to be the victim here. They could still sell their nasty little rag in a million other places. I think the real issue here is about circulation. And it may be, some say actually that this will backfire and the numbers will increase. I don't agree with that actually, because I think someone who is so petty to not use a train company because it's decided to take off their favorite newspaper. Here's the thing though, you can still buy the Daily Mail. You can still read it on a Virgin train. If if you believe it's a great newspaper and it speaks the truth and all the rest of it, you can still buy it. Nothing's stopping you. Okay? Richard Branson is not saying I forbid you to buy the Daily Mail. He's just saying you can't buy it on my train. Buy it at the station, bring it onto the train. So, people who are crying about this need to put things in context. Um, and a final point about censorship. People will say that I'm just saying this because I dislike the Daily Mail. Well, I admit I dislike the Daily Mail, but I would be saying the same thing about any newspaper. Put it this way: I read the Times, the Independent. Well, the I more than the Independent. The Times is centre right, the I is centre left. If something similar happened, I would maybe be a little annoyed, but I would be consistent. I would say, well, look, the press can't just say that we can operate wherever we like. Okay, it's that's not how it works. That is not what freedom of the press is. Freedom of the press just means the government isn't restricting your right to criticize them, your right to hold them to account. But it's about time we start extending that to saying, okay, who holds the press to account? To account. I believe not a lot has changed since phone hacking. I believe there is still a fundamental rot at the core of journalism in this country. Don't get me wrong; there are many professional, decent journalists out there. I'm not slamming the whole industry. On the left and right, there are lots of decent journalists. I'm sure even the Daily Mail has a few decent journalists, but its editorials are so pompous and so arrogant and so it seems to think that freedom of the press means it can do anything it wants. That idea has to be challenged.